All right, good afternoon, everybody. How are you all feeling? Are we energized? Yes. I am trying to get there with you. Yesterday was a fantastic day, wasn't it? It was fantastic, long. This morning, some really great speakers. This afternoon, fantastic speakers. So I appreciate you all being here with Lynn and I. Really appreciative that you wanted to come and hear a little bit more about delivery services and our vision. We're excited to share it with you. And we promise to bring as much energy as we possibly can to this presentation. So I'm Cathy King. I'm the Executive Director of Delivery Services, and as I mentioned, I am joined here by the famous Lynn Connaway, who was quoted yesterday during Skip's presentation, right? Let's say hello. Lynn is from the Lorcan Dempsey's research group, and today we're going to talk to you a little bit about the vision and strategy that we've been working on for delivery services. You might wonder, what is delivery services? So I'm from the product team. So my team is responsible for creating the strategy and roadmap and working with our development team to build out our products and services. Delivery is a relatively new portfolio for us. So what we did was we combined a couple of products and services into one team. About a year or so ago now at this point. We combined our end user products, which are First Search, WorldCat.org, WorldCat Discovery, probably familiar to some of you, along with a couple of other products. That's one being very important, the resource sharing product line. So WorldShare ILL, Tapasa, and Iliad. Any users of any of those services in here? Pretty much everybody. So we did this. We combined these two teams for one very specific reason. We were doing some strategic planning at OCLC, and we had heard from our community, heard from all of you, that what's becoming more and more important to you all, and we just heard this reflected in Keith's presentation, is to pay attention to the end user's journey, kind of from start to finish, from discovery through to delivery, because their expectations are changing. And I mentioned this if you were in the open access presentation earlier this morning, that the user's expectations are changing. You're probably feeling this in the library. And those changes are being driven by the experiences they have outside the library. And Keith again referenced this. So experiences they have maybe using Google or Amazon. Anybody noticing this in your libraries? Yes. It's really interesting. So I've become more, as we've been talking about this, I've become more aware of my own changing expectations. And I was really hyper aware of this, I think it was in August, the Hurricane Dorian, was it? Yeah. Anybody following Hurricane Dorian? Have loved ones there, lived there? My father, his profession is to put people back in power. So I'm from Pennsylvania. So when the hurricane was being projected to hit Florida, he and his crew drove down to Florida with thousands of other men and women to put people back in power, to essentially be stationed there, wait for the hurricane to come through, and then to quickly restore power. So I was paying very close attention to what was going on with Hurricane Dorian. And when I noticed that my expectations had changed, I went to Google and I typed in, where's the hurricane now? And I saw an article that was from the New York Times, and it was about an hour old. And I thought, an hour old, this is ridiculous. That is way out of date. So I was on Twitter and on, Radar that was maybe within 15 minutes. And I thought, wow, have my expectations changed for how quickly I can get information just by sort of that one experience? It's very interesting. And I'm sure that you're seeing other people and your own expectations changing. So we've been grappling with this as we've worked on what is the vision for our resource sharing products, what's the vision for our discovery products in this world of heightened expectations from your users. So what we want to share with you today is some of the research that we've done and that vision that we've created. And one thing I wanted to note, I often get asked, how do you come up with your strategy? What does OCLC do to come up with your strategy and your vision? And really, there are three inputs that I think are important to mention, although I'm sure there are other inputs. One is, of course, the OCLC Research Group. And usually, if I'm giving this presentation without Lynn, you'll see a picture of her. So Lynn's going to come up here in a minute and talk about some of those research findings that she's done over the last many years, that actually Keith mentioned, so you hear directly from her what she's been finding. The other input is community input, so one very impactful input that recently we've been using is the D2D discovery to delivery white paper that the BTAA put out on resource sharing. Has anyone read that one or heard of it? No, I've not. So we drew a lot of inspiration from that. And then, of course, user trends, what's going on outside the library, and what's appropriate to really incorporate within the library. So Lynn, I'm going to hand it over to Lynn now. Lynn is going to take you through some of the research, and then I'll come back up and talk about how OCLC is responding to that. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Cathy. And convenience. I thought it was interesting that it came up today with Keith. And then when he said he used a lot of our research, then I thought, well, that makes sense. Because that's what we keep finding. But convenience is a moving target. And so what's convenient this moment when all of us are sitting in the room may not be convenient at 4:30 in the afternoon when we're all trying to get to the airport. So I will talk a little bit about that as we move along. What we've been finding is library systems are difficult to use, or that's the perception of users. And when we talk to both graduate and undergraduate students, and even faculty, I must say, they commented on how easy the web is to use compared to any of the library systems. And so I'm sure we hear that all the time. This is not anything new, but it's something that we need to be thinking about as we develop our systems, our web pages, our finding aids. And I see some of you nodding your heads, so I'm sure you're already doing this. And we also have some quotes. And I got this idea from Susan Dumais at Microsoft Research. And she said whenever they do user studies or usability studies, they always ask the individuals, what delighted you about this? So when we were going to talk to users, I said, let's try this. And some of my colleagues were a little hesitant. And I said, let's just do it. So we had 14 interviews that we did. What we did is we had their search logs from the discovery system. So we took those search logs, and then we had the pop-up at the end. And we said, would you be interested in talking to us about this experience? And if they said yes, they clicked on the link, we got their demographic information. So we were looking for undergraduate, graduate students, we were looking at, and faculty, different disciplines. We had 5 universities in the US who were willing to work with us. We had to go through 5 institutional review boards. And so we had these logs. And then we had questions. So we had some very broad, semi-structured interview questions. But then we had to gear those questions to their actual movements and what they did. So we had to reconstruct, we had to get the logs, clean the logs, reconstruct their searches, and then try to come up with the questions that we wanted to ask them. What were the gaps in our knowledge? One example I have was we had an undergraduate student, 45 seconds was the amount of the search. Now we give the individuals a $20 Amazon gift card. Now I know that's not a lot of money, but when we do a lot of these studies, they add up. The $20 adds up. And so I said to my research colleague, okay, this is going to be a snooze fest. We're wasting our time, 45 seconds for this interview, for this search. Yeah, this is crazy. And she said, Lynn, we're supposed to do this. We're going to do this. So we did it. The interview was 45 minutes long. The search was 45 seconds. What we learned is that it was not a failed search. But what happened was the individual found something and went to the actual stacks in the library and perused the shelves and found several items. So it wasn't a drop search. It wasn't an unsuccessful search. The individual actually thought it was a success. But if I would have just looked at that log, what would I have said? It was a failure. It was a failed search. And so this type of methodology is something that's really helpful and informative. It also takes a lot of time. And there was no one else who we found in computer science or library and information science that had done this before. We found that Spotify was actually looking at their logs and finding patterns, which we do. And then they had focus group interviews to follow up on that. But they did not have that individual experience that we actually had. Now we have this quote, and it's the delightful one. And the individual said, I was really not delighted, but the ease of using it, the discovery system, was great. I didn't have to work too hard to find what I wanted. I just had to think about it and make sure I was using the right word. It was really simple. I think that's the most important. So in that way, yes, it was very delightful to be able to not have to go through a lot of hoops to get what I was looking for, because figuring out the topic is complicated enough. So finding something was delightful. This is another quote. This is from a faculty member, and the faculty member was in Australia on this one, because we did another study where we talked to semi-structured interviews in person or via Skype with faculty and graduate students. And this faculty member said, is a female between the ages of 45 and 54, because you never ask anyone their exact age. And she says, yes, the system that they've got at the moment, the library, is if I want to request a physical item, is that they've just got this form online on the library website. And I can do that. That's really good. I'd like to get an email reminder. So this is about interlibrary loan. I'd like to get an email reminder about a week before it's due, because I won't have that written down anywhere. So just to remind me that I need to return the item. For things like that, the interlibrary loans say with electronic copies, I'm very happy to request online using their online form, and then just have the correspondence after by email, because email is the most convenient for me. Now, we found that with undergraduate students and graduate students, that they want to get communication from librarians via email. Now, when we also talk to undergraduate students and those 12 to 18-year-olds who we call the screenagers, they often tell us that email is for old people, but yet they want to communicate with us via email through the library. When I question why, they say because that's what you do. Everything through the university goes through email. That's what you do. That's how you manage through the educational system. And we have data, longitudinal data, where we have 12-year-olds through 17-year-olds who very rarely use email. And as soon as they get into the academy, that goes up to 99% use of email. And so, again, that putting the library in the life of the user isn't exactly what's happening. And it's not just the library. This is from an ILL librarian in Australia, and we conducted some focus group interviews. And we were talking about unmediated interlibrary loan versus mediated interlibrary loan for fulfillment. And this librarian says it's the things that are difficult to find that then come through to the staff. And the staff have to do the work from there to try to find the copy. There will always be a bit of mediated and unmediated. So the individual was saying, I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where it will be an unmediated request. And so some of you are not sure. Again, this is one person's perspective. I want to talk, I mentioned the context and situation. That context dictates our behavior. And so as you're sitting here, I see some of you taking notes. I see others using a mobile phone. I see others with a laptop. I see tablets. And I see some of you actually just sitting and listening and, well, maybe daydreaming, but not taking notes, but just sitting and listening. Now, as I said, that may change. At 4:30, when we're all trying to get to the airport, but you're also trying to find out, you're trying to get an Uber or a Lyft. You're trying to find out if your flight's on time. You're looking to see what the traffic looks like. You're trying to get your bag. I bet not many of you have your laptops out, or have your tablet, or are writing something on paper. You're probably all using a mobile phone, or talking to someone, because human resources are also very important. What people want is for our systems in the library to anticipate their context, and that's hard to do. I know Keith talked about artificial intelligence. He's talking about, again, putting the library in the life of the user, but individuals have expectations based on their everyday lives. And their everyday lives consist of Google, Amazon, Snapchat, Uber, all of these things, and their expectations are very high. This is a graduate student, and this graduate student is this was in the US, and she said, I wasn't really open-minded for looking for all sorts of information. I was hunting. So that was a different kind of experience. When I probed, because I did this interview, what she was hunting for was something to prove her point in a paper. So some of you are nodding your heads. She had no literature, nothing to back up what she believed. And the paper was due. And so what did she do? She started scrambling, trying to find anything that would support her theory. It was a different way of searching for information. This is from a librarian in the US, and again, the focus group interviews with ILL librarians at the ACRL conference in Cleveland in April. And she says, there's no reason why we can't integrate tracking into our ILL systems. UPS and FedEx have all apps that could be easily integrated into those. It doesn't even take a magic wand. It's very easy. Now, when we talk to a faculty member in Australia, the faculty member says the same thing. Just a little email, just like you would the modern way. You buy a product, and then it's on its way. It's been shipped. It should be here this day. That'd be great. To me, that would be kind of fun, rather than, I don't know where they're sending this book. I hope I get it. And so think about your everyday life. You know, how many of you order something while you're sitting here? And then you get an email, 5-10 minutes, saying, we're processing your order. The order has left the warehouse. These are our expectations, and there are users' expectations. Now we're going to get to the delightful. They do find that we satisfy or satisfice, okay? And that's not surprising. We've been hearing that in our interviews since 2003. Surprise delights, and I have an example of that. And what we need to be thinking about is these preferences, having a single account that will cater to all of our needs, to anticipate our needs. Privacy comes in a lot when we talk with librarians. When we talk to provosts, privacy wasn't a big issue for them. Why? They're selling education. They want to know what people were doing and what their habits are so that they can accommodate them in their education. So this is someone, it says staff member. This person worked in the library, but was also a student. And so the student says, if I was searching for something that I didn't expect them to have, and then I search, and there it is at the top, that would be like, oh, now I'm really delighted that they have this. So just finding something at the top of the page in a retrieval is delightful. So our bar is low, and we have a lot of room to improve. This whole thing of universal, and this comes up with the fulfillment. And it came up when we were talking about, when Keith was talking earlier about the scholarly record and the evolving scholarly record. We have these networks that are global. We have local networks, we have regional networks, we have global networks. We have a lot of partnerships between libraries and regions of libraries. We're also, or should be, neutral when it comes to providing information. And so we're not pushing one publisher over another or one type of information over another. We're just providing the information. And then we really should have some universal hubs, which can be our libraries. This was an undergraduate student in the US, and she said most of our books in their academic library are from the 60s or 70s, and it's just not helpful. And I still don't do the ebooks. Of the 14 individuals who we interviewed, none of them said that they liked to use ebooks, which surprised me. You know what they liked? Do you know what format? Any guess? They liked print books and they loved PDF. And when I questioned the PDF, it was because it's portable. They can download it, they can put it someplace on their hard drive. If they need it, they can look at it on their mobile phone. So they really liked PDF. It's more portable. But anyway, she goes on to say, I just don't have the ability to use ebooks. When I asked the question, what do you mean you don't have the ability to use ebooks? And she said, I only have a smartphone. I don't have a laptop. And I have to go into the lab on campus to use the computer or a laptop. And so I don't like to read it on my smartphone. So that was the issue with the ebook for her. She said, I would probably request a newer book from another library so I could have that physical copy. When I write, when I work, I use the physical book most of the time. If you look at my office when I'm writing, it's covered with papers, books on the floor. But it's also, I have 2 workstations with laptops that also have information. I'm a little ADD, but I think many individuals work that way these days. Lots of information, lots of things to look at, and lots of things to use. So before I turn it over to Cathy, I just want to go over again these 4 things that I was trying to get across today, talking about what we've learned from talking to individuals. This intuitiveness, which comes up with that convenience, knowing what I want. This smart, this context. Context and situation is critical. And that's the hard piece. This personal aspect. One of the things we learned with virtual reference was that even if individuals did not get the answer they wanted, if the librarian was respectful, if the librarian was kind and had a good rapport with the individual, that encounter was considered a success. And so we need to make things more personal, it's that community, that relationship. And also this universal, sharing our resources and making the resources available as soon as possible to the user. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynn. It's fantastic. Okay, so I always tell Lynn, she's such an inspiration to me, don't I, Lynn?
You do.
Lynn inspires me, and really particularly as we grapple with helping you to adjust your products and services to meet these changing needs, Lynn inspires the product team to change and to think about things differently. And one of the things that we realized as we wanted to craft our vision and strategy was that we needed a user-centric vision in order to meet some of these themes that you're finding in your research. So thank you, Lynn. So to share a little bit about that vision and strategy, what I thought I would do, no better place to start, is with the actual user themselves. So I'm going to tell you a little story. And really this is a technique that we use a lot at OCLC as we're developing software. We craft user journeys. Does anybody use user journeys in your library? Yeah, fantastic. What user journeys allow you to do is look at how users are using not only the library, but sort of like what happens before they get to the library or use your services, what happens after, what their context is. And so you can gather information about what are the gaps in our services, where are the pain points, and where are the things that we're doing really well and maybe wouldn't want to change. So I'm just going to share with you one user journey that we've created as a non-user of the library. Lynn calls them potential users of the library. Her journey as she is looking to complete an assignment. So she is an undergraduate student. I could have easily chosen the graduate student, the faculty, but I chose Jill, the undergraduate student. I think many of you will recognize her. So Jill is looking for Of Mice and Men. And Jill's got a problem because Jill has to read Of Mice and Men by Monday, and today is Friday. So Jill, oh poor Jill. Jill has waited to the last minute again. Does anybody know Jill, by the way? Yeah, a few people.
Probably Jill.
Yeah. Okay. Jill will never learn. So, as I said, I wanted to watch her experience as she uses services outside the library because we want to glean some insights as to how that experience works for Jill, because that expectation will come to the library, as we've said over and over again. So let's say in this case, Jill goes to Amazon, super easy. It comes to the top of the page. She's delighted by that. One click, and she's able to download that on her Kindle. Well, let's say that Jill has turned over a new leaf. Jill's going to plan ahead. She has, let's say, a marketing class coming up and she needs a book, and her preference is to read nonfiction in print. So she goes ahead and sees, oh, I can get this book. It'll be to me in 2 days, which, by the way, I think Amazon is now getting down to 1 day, just semi-incredible. Maybe it'll be here tomorrow. And one click and it's on its way. Lynn talked about how important context is in this case, right? So she's okay with fiction on the Kindle, nonfiction preferred in print. The other thing that Jill has to do is get some coffee and some food because she's got to start reading. So what does she do? She goes to her favorite app, Uber Eats, DoorDash. Anybody use those apps yet? Yeah, I'm addicted to those apps. It's very easy to have dinner just kind of delivered right to you. So this is Jill's journey as she goes about procuring Of Mice and Men for her report. So we wrote this journey and we thought, okay, that's not that interesting. That looks like any journey that we might have as we use products and services. And then I started to reflect upon my education. I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I'm excited to see Pittsburgh represented so much by Keith and myself. It's great. So I went to the University of Pittsburgh 10, 15, 20 years ago. Don't ask. It's a range, right, Lynn?
It's a range.
It's a range. And this was certainly not my experience. So how long does this take Jill? This takes Jill 5 minutes, maybe, to get from I'm going to get food, I'm going to get Of Mice and Men, and I'm going to start reading. She's on her bed reading. So when I went to the University of Pittsburgh, if this had happened to me, which this might be based on a true story, I would have had to walk down to the student union, look at the bus schedules, find out that I could catch a bus in a half an hour, get on the bus, go to Borders bookstore, which doesn't even exist anymore, hope that they had Of Mice and Men in stock, and then of course swing around to Starbucks or wherever I could get food. And that whole process from start to finish is 4 hours, 8 hours, depending, right? So I wasn't getting started until much later. So it's very interesting to see how quickly things have changed and become normal. And so this is the new normal, that's the point. Going from 4 to 8 hours to 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but it's interesting to really reflect upon how your expectations are changing. I talked about the hurricane changing. I need news in a minute, apparently. So it's not just Amazon and Google, it's these other services that are really impacting the way that we live. And really interesting, so I was sharing this with my team, and one person said something. She said, well, you forgot a step. Okay, what step did I forget? I forgot the step where Jill calls her parents and asks for money so that she can download Of Mice and Men. I don't have kids, so I didn't know about that. But honestly, that is true. So it would have been faster for my parents to drive 6 hours across Pennsylvania to give me money than, I don't know, try any other way to get me money back 15, 20 years ago, right? So now you've got services like Venmo, where like that I can send you money, or we can sort of bump phones and Apple Pay transfers money. Does anybody use Venmo? Yeah. I'm not a user of Venmo. I downloaded it, and it was creepy because all of a sudden I could see what everybody else in the world was paying for and my friends. I was a little bit nerve-wracked by that. But it's okay for millennials, apparently. So what I want to do is, I promised that we would look at this customer journey, this user journey, and understand where we can glean insights. So this is a pretty smooth process. So I'd like to break this down so that we can use that to inform our products and services and really understand what types of enhancements do we need in order to make the experience look a little bit more like this. So really the first thing, Lynn talked about intuitive discovery, very, very important as Jill is looking for Of Mice and Men, right? She has an intuitive discovery experience. The other thing to note is it's really through any channel. So these days, she probably could have just said, listen to me, these days, she probably could have just said, hey Alexa, download Of Mice and Men on my Kindle, and really not even interacted with a screen. I recently read an article that said by 2020, I think it's like 50 to 60% of all traffic will be without a screen. Very interesting voice, very important, something to think about. The other thing that's on the slide that I love to point out, so I created these slides 6-7 months ago or so, a while ago, but I leave it on there because I think it's really important to point out the tide buttons. So anybody know what these tide buttons are? Anybody have one? Yeah, see, that's the problem. So these buttons were buttons that Amazon allowed you to put throughout your house, and you could say, oh, I'm out of Tide. So I'd hit the button, and Tide would show up 2 days later. Or I'm out of paper towels, I'm gonna hit the paper towel button. And so apparently the idea was you litter your house with these buttons and allow Amazon with one click of it to deliver the products. So shortly after we created these slides, this product was discontinued. They found people didn't like it, discontinued in favor of Alexa. I leave it here though as a reminder that as we are observing consumer trends, user trends, that we need to make sure that we're incorporating things that are appropriate for the library. So I'm not necessarily saying that we need to be Amazon, but what we're trying to do is glean the insights of the experience to make the experience better and more familiar. Plus, I really like to make fun of the Tide buttons. So intuitive discovery, step 1, I can find it, super easy. Step 2, smart fulfillment. So this is I apologize for the Amazon experience again, but nobody does this better than Amazon. What is from a context perspective, what are my choices? What's the transparency of when I'm gonna get this thing? How much is it gonna cost? So my favorite thing to point out on this slide is the Kindle plus Audible link. So what I love about this is I can be driving home and listen to Of Mice and Men, or my favorite book, and I can listen to it and then get out of my car, go sit down on my couch, pick up my Kindle right where I left off, because it keeps track of where I am. Talk about context. And so what's also interesting about this is I'm also able to make judgments about, okay, how long is it gonna take to get to me? I know it's gonna take 2 days. And the parallel that I'll draw here to the library world is when we think about resource sharing, Oftentimes that can be a little of a black hole. How long is this thing going to get to me? Is it going to get to me? How long is it going to take? Can I track this thing? So these are things that we're sort of thinking about. And that leads me to this next point around tracking and sort of a one-stop shop. So Lynn mentioned Uber. So you know what Uber has done to all of us? It's made us hyper aware of where all our stuff is. So let's say you're using one of the DoorDash apps, for example, and you've ordered dinner. Well, you can see when the pizza delivery guy, the DoorDash delivery guy is coming around the corner, right? And you can see them turn left and then turn right and like, oh, give me 2 minutes. Okay, 1 minute. It's a great way to stave off hunger, for sure. But it also drives this just like I said, the hyper awareness of where is my stuff. I can see down to the minute, the second. So something to pay attention to. The other thing is, I wanted to point out is, it's just one place to see all of my stuff. Oftentimes in the library space, we have a lot of different accounts for our users, a lot of different places to go to see my circulation requests, my ILL requests. That's something that we're thinking about. We want to pull that into one place or enable you all to pull that into one place so that you can mimic these types of experiences where people just expect to go to one spot and see all of their things about their relationship with you. So really, these are the 3 key pillars that make up this great experience. But there's one more. That is apparently not in the slide. Okay, there's one more, and I'm missing a slide. And I've seen actually a lot of presenters missing slides. I'm not sure what's going on. There's like a slide fairy taking away all of our slides. The other thing is, picture a slide with a warehouse on it. And the warehouse slide says, universal access to everything. So this idea that you can get anything, anywhere, anytime, on demand. And so back to my Jill example. So, and the person who said you forgot about the credit card and the payment. So what she does to kind of cut this off is she gives her son a credit card on his Amazon account so that he can just order whatever he needs for school, which is so lovely. That is definitely not my experience from college, but but she's able to do that because Amazon has again driven this experience that I can get anything, right? It's no longer just books. It is the paper towels. It's shoes. It's whatever it is you might want. So that's really our 4th pillar to this experience. So as I already unveiled, our vision is to help you provide these experiences for your user to really enable the library on demand. And in many cases, you're already doing this, right? So you've got discovery layers, OPACs, that enable access to electronic resources. What we want to do is take that to the next level by connecting all of the dots and creating a more seamless experience for your users. And the good news is that we have pretty much all of the pieces and parts within OCLC. So what we've envisioned is that we've got these pieces and parts, we can connect them better for you all, and that doesn't mean you have to buy every piece and part, but what we'd like to do is connect our own products together to create this seamless experience and leverage things like APIs so that you can use the tools that you subscribe to within your own products and services in your ecosystem of whatever institution you have. So, as an example of the pieces and parts we have today, we have this great partnership network where we essentially meet library users where they are outside of the library. So Lynn talks about this. Meet users in their journey, don't expect them to come to you. One of the great things about OCLC and our scale is that we're able to partner with people like institutions, companies like Goodreads, Wikipedia, Google Books. Did you all know we put the library button on Goodreads? So if you go to the detailed record page, click libraries, goes to worldcat.org. Very, very interesting. So we have a project right now where we're looking at the design of that and modernizing that for the lifelong learner. That's a piece of this puzzle we have. The other piece of this puzzle that we have is we've got WorldCat Discovery, which comes with our WMS, largely with our WMS product, our ILS product on the academic side. What I'm showing here is a recent enhancement that we did. This is a virtual shelf browse. So I think this is really interesting and important to the vision because as users are essentially digital, they're off campus, they're not in your library, they still have this need to, maybe they can't get up after the 45-second search and go browse the shelf. We still want to bring that digital experience to life. So we recently partnered with the University of New Mexico. They were relocating, or are in the process of a project relocating shelving collections off-site, so they really needed this shelf browse, really, for their faculty and their students. So really cool. The other thing, so smart fulfillment, we've talked about. Context is really important, knowing all my choices. And in some cases, it's just the small little tweaks to an experience that enables a more delightful experience. So in this case, what we recently did is we said, okay, if you pull up an ebook and the library has it, then why not show that it's available in the library and that they can, in fact, go get it if that's what they're looking for. Small little enhancement we made, but it's because we've stated this vision and this strategy that it made sense to make this enhancement. Of course, we worked with the community on the best way to bring this to life. The third thing I'll mention here is that we do have one place, and I'll mention this in the enhancement. So we do right now have a one-stop shop if you're using Tipasa and WMS. And I'll talk about what's going to kind of go in the future. So you can one place for you to come see all your circulation requests and your ILL requests to kind of start to build that more seamless experience for library users. And then, see, I have it here, universal access to massive inventory. So as my fourth pillar, I promise it's there. So all of this is backed up by this universal access to massive inventory. And when you think about it, I'm OCLC, right? You might think of WorldCat, which would be really great, right? We have the world's largest library catalog in WorldCat. But we also have this massive central index, which I think has 3.8 billion records in it. We have a strong strategy in open access and incorporating that content. And if you were here earlier today, you heard all about that strategy. On top of that, we're looking at how does shared print impact this strategy, the collective collection. It's very important for us to help you with, as collections sort of shift from just in case to just in time, what does that look like for all of this? So these are, again, our 4 pillars. Thank you, Lynn, for your great research to inspire these. So a couple of things I mentioned that we have, and a couple of things coming up. I probably could go on for 3 more hours, and I don't have 3 more hours. So I'm going to dive into just 2 of these. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's coming up for single account, and then some about smart fulfillment. But again, this is just sort of a taste of what's coming up next. And my product team probably could do a much better job of explaining this, but I'm going to try to do them justice. So first, smart fulfillment. So when we think about smart fulfillment, we think of a couple of things, and I mentioned this when I was going through the Amazon example. We think a lot about how can we provide more transparency. Again, I'm not saying we're going to be Amazon where we're delivering materials within an hour or a couple of hours. But really, what I'm taking from that journey is this transparency. How long is it going to take me? And can I predict how long it's going to take me? Especially since OCLC has so much resource sharing data. This product has been around for 40 years. We should be able to do something with machine learning and AI. And so we are certainly prototyping and experimenting there. So we can provide a little more transparency. And this might not look like, okay, we can get it 2 and 3 days, but maybe it looks like a green, yellow, red. We can get it to you soon, or maybe you don't want it because it's coming from one library across the world, that kind of thing. But what we also are talking about is smart fulfillment is enabled by greater automation. So Lynn mentioned mediated and unmediated. What we'd like to do is automate as much as possible so that you don't have to mediate every request. I hear from the resource sharing community quite a bit that it's important to automate so that you can spend your time working on things that are a little bit more tough to fulfill, those edge cases. Megan Gaffney from the University of Delaware calls it her detective work. I want to spend my time on that, not on what's easy. So we are looking to incorporate more automation within our resource sharing products. This is from my product team. So this is just a pithy way to explain this. What's this probability? So this thing of saying like, okay, if there's only a 50% chance that we could get you this, let's look at other options if you need it right away. For example, if you're trying to request something that is in print, but you have it in electronic, or you get it in electronic, let's show you that too. So when we look at doing some prototyping for how can we predict how long it's going to take. There are 3 components that we're really thinking about. So how long does it take for the library, the lender to process? How long does it take to ship? And then how long does it take the borrower to process? So to the magic wand comment earlier, yes, we can understand how long it is in transit. Of course, there are a couple of other factors that come into play, and we're looking at all those factors. The other thing I mentioned, automation, that I am so excited about. Does anybody use direct request today within WorldShare ILL? Because I sort of expected that. Okay, so direct request within WorldShare ILL, if you are a WorldShare ILL user, you have access to it. It allows you to set up several rules that automate transactions. Not a lot of people use it. I don't think there's a lot of awareness, and to be honest, it's hard to use. It's a little clunky to set up those profiles. So one thing that we're doing over the next year, and there'll be several incremental enhancements, is we're making that user interface easier for you as your staff are setting up these profiles, so your ILL department to set up these profiles so that you can automate more requests and it's easier and intuitive for you to use. So that's also important. Intuitive for the user and intuitive for you. So here are a couple of examples of what we're up to. So this, most of these enhancements will go into WorldShare ILL as well as to PASA. One thing that I should mention, we are really focused on turnaround time within the WorldShare ILL network and making that better. And if you subscribe to WorldShare ILL, you will see those enhancements coming out. We are working on a roadmap right now to do that. So we're kind of excited to continue adding value to that fulfillment network. Okay, so single account. So we talked a little bit about tracking. Lynn mentioned this. So of course, this is just our way to say, okay, if we can predict how long it's going to take, could we also show something more visual in the way of status? It's in transit, at least something to say where it is, not necessarily how long it's going to take to get there, but a little bit more of a cue, so it's not the black box. So just some mock-ups. The other thing Lynn mentioned, it's like you completely set me up.
Good.
Is the email. So I believe today, well, let me take a step back. I was talking to the head of ILL at Penn, and I said, if you could have anything from the resource sharing products that you use, what would they be? And we had a really great discussion. One of the things he said was, please send an email notification to my users when they actually submit a request, because that's what people expect today. They expect to have some acknowledgement for the request that they send. So this is something that we're working on as well. Okay. All right, and I want to make a final note. So if you aren't using our TPASA interface, and you want to start to incorporate these types of items within your own, like let's say Primo Discovery instance or whatever discovery application you use, we are taking an API first approach. So we will be releasing APIs so that you don't have to necessarily use our interface, you can use other interfaces. And that's something that I've heard from the resource sharing community and the discovery community quite a bit. They're looking for APIs so that you can incorporate some of this great data within the context of your own systems, so users, again, don't have to go to many different systems. And I think this is my final slide, so I'll just say that I'm very excited about this new vision and strategy that we're setting forward. There's more research to come. Lynn and I are still collaborating on research. You've got a global network of libraries within OCLC, and we're just excited to continue to partner with you on this new vision going forward. Thank you.